Tracey, you've got a class coming up this month on how histamine intolerance is specifically related and affected by the ear, nose, and throat area. Can you talk about how this manifests in people, some of the symptoms, and where this comes from?
Yeah, symptoms, there's actually quite a few. And there's one that I think we can find across these body parts. So, histamine in the eyes, nose, throat, ears, itchiness is one of the things that histamine is very well known for. So, if you've got itchy eyes, right, you're rubbing your eyes, itchy nose, like, do you have some kind of weird, find you're scratching your nose or just like doing something to your nose? I know that was me all through my childhood. So itchiness in the mouth or throat for sure, histamine mediated, and even in the ears, if you find you're just itching a lot in your ears. So itchiness is a big histamine mediated symptom. With your eyes, in addition to itchiness, do you feel like your eyes are gritty or irritated, maybe swollen? And here's one that's not talked about a lot, but do you find that you're sensitive to light? So, those are some indicators that histamine is at play. Sensitivities of any kind are a big one. With your ears, there's also some really, really interesting histamine mediated symptoms. Tinnitus, that's that ringing, that constant ringing that people can have. I had that in my right ear for years and years until I got my histamine and mast cells under control. Some people, and I've also had this, get like this feeling of pressure or blocked ears. So, this would be comparable to like if you've been swimming and you get water in your ears and it feels blocked, or maybe you're on an airplane and you're descending and your ears get blocked. So you can have the same thing happen with histamine.
And is that because of congestion that stems from histamine, or is it something else?
No, I think it's swelling, swelling that can happen within the ears. And so, in addition to that feeling of it being blocked, you might also feel like your hearing is muffled, right? So these are all kind of related to one another. Um, and then, so we've done eyes, ears, nose, sinus inflammation is such a big one. And so with that, maybe you've got postnasal drip or you're always blowing your nose. But like, this is what my childhood and teen years were like. I was a mouth breather. So in my childhood, at night, I breathed through my mouth, and that was simply because my nasal passageways were inflamed. When I was a teenager, I was breathing through my mouth all the time. So if you're a mouth breather at all part of the time, if you don't know, ask somebody who sleeps with you or try mouth taping to see if you're able to sleep with your mouth closed. So that would be a sign. And then within the mouth, there are some really, really interesting ones. So we've talked about itching. If you have swelling in your mouth, if you have a tingling sensation in your mouth or burning sensation in your mouth, you definitely want to start thinking about histamine or mast cell involvement. In fact, there is a condition called burning mouth syndrome. And there is a research paper that shows that that is the same thing as mast cell activation syndrome. So if you're having these unusual symptoms, particularly after you've eaten certain foods, then you definitely want to be thinking histamine or mast cells. And then for some people, they'll get voice complaints. They might have troubles just speaking loudly. I know I used to get this feeling of throat tightness, and, I just had no idea why. And I used to be a teacher. Well, I mean, I'm still a teacher. I used to teach kids. Now I teach adults. But it was very distressing if I was trying to teach and my throat was starting to feel tight and constricted. Back then I had absolutely, like, I was only diagnosed with mast cell activation 5 years ago, 6 years ago now, right? So, I mean, I had no idea what was happening at the time. But these areas, I feel like there's a lot of talk about body systems. So, the respiratory system or the digestive system or the reproductive system, the brain and nervous system, we always talk about symptoms related to these. But I feel like the eyes and the nose. Well, the nose is part of the respiratory, but the ears and the mouth and throat sort of get lost in all of that. So it's a really interesting area to talk about symptom wise.
Yeah, I agree with you. And even as you were listing those off, I'm like, gosh, there's so many different, those are like so many annoying symptoms, and imagine you have that list. If you go to a doctor, like there's nothing big on there. They're not going to, you're not going to get open heart surgery on some of those. So maybe there's a decongestion or, an allergy med or something. But my point is so many people, I think, experience some of those and wonder what the heck's going on. And I've, was like that too. Like probably at least half a dozen of the symptoms you named, I've noticed them. They bothered me in the past, but I didn't know what was wrong. Didn't really know, who to go to or what specialist to try and see. And even if I mentioned it in an appointment, it's like you're saying, it's not a major gut issue or something, a respiratory issue or something like that. There's just not a lot of focus. So it's interesting to hear that all of those different options could be related to histamine. So if someone's suffering for some of that, annoyed by some of those symptoms, that gives them an option to look into. And in my case, that would have been really valuable because it turns out I did have some of this immune dysfunction, histamine intolerance going on, but I just never even knew or thought to connect it. I just thought, oh, it's spring. Oh, I'm a little stuffed up this week. But fast forward all these years and lots of learning and trial and error, and I can connect those things back to things. So the fact that we don't have to live with all this stuff, there's ways to address it and understand it is great news.
Yeah, and even though there may be these more obscure symptoms, these are some of the ones that can really, really impact your quality of life on a daily basis.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially the sleep. I remember the mouth breathing and just like dry, cracked lips and stuffed up in the sinus, no air in there. And you wake up and you feel, I felt like a pile of bricks, just like groggy and tired and slow. And yeah, it's no fun. So tell us about, you're doing a class on this and if, how can people attend the class? And if they listen to this after the fact, where can they go on your website to get the material or check in with you?
Yeah. So we have a website, histaminehaven.com. And on that website, every month we run a webinar. So this month's is particularly focused in on this topic. So anybody can register for their webinar. And if you're not able to make the date, we always send the replay out. So you'll always have access to that. Or you can just register for the next month's webinar.
Okay, great. Thanks, Tracey.
Thank you.